Welcome to this dialogue with Rod Chambers. My name is Lee Mason and I'm the creator of Integral Flourishing Part 1 and Integral Flourishing Part 2, which are two online courses designed to help participants optimize their quality of life. The courses offer a combination of theoretical models related to human well-being and practical exercises to improve health and well-being. Rod has taken the Integral Flourishing courses as a participant and has also helped me to facilitate the course for other participants. So Rod, could you please give a short introduction for anyone watching?
Sure. Well, thank you firstly for welcoming me in this dialogue and discussion. For those who don't know me, I am a native of Texas. I have lived in New Mexico for most of my young adult life. I played football. I was a scholar athlete. So I played football there and I completed my BA, my master's degree, as well as started most of my professional career. Most of my professional background is in education. I've also lived in Chicago for a couple of years, and then shortly after moved to China for another maybe 2 or 3 years. Again, all on the link of teaching, educating. I actually started a company, helped to co-found a company, a touring company in China, and then shortly after moved back to the States and continue with education as well as working with the wonderful institution, online institution, Ubiquity University.
Well, thanks, Rod. Excellent. So today I would like to interview you about your experiences of the Integral Flourishing courses as a participant. So you've said something about your background already, but can you say something about your motivation to participate in the Integral Flourishing courses?
Okay, sure. During the time I enrolled in what we call the IF course, I was still living in China at the time. And during that time, I was going through a lot of personal transitions, and some of the responses that I had with many of the courses that I was taking at Ubiquity was that it was providing me with language to describe some of the change that was happening during that time. And taking a quick side step, with many of the courses at Ubiquity, there's a lot of overlap dealing with the AQAL, AQ, AL, as well as the quadrants, the concepts. And as you enroll in the course, you'll learn more about that. But the IF course really emphasized a lot of those principles and really made them more understandable for me. And so coming into the course, I only heard that we'd be talking about some of those things, but I learned more in depth of what those things were. And the reason why I mention that is because in earlier classes that I was taking, I was learning about a lot of new language and a lot of new concepts. And some of those concepts were still very abstract to me. Coming into Lee's course, or the IF course, I was able to find ways to really apply the new concepts and learn the new language in a way that felt more secure and comfortable to me. And so as I'm thinking about making personal changes and really deepening my understanding about self and self-identity, the course helped to give me a new framework to really articulate that, as well as live that out, and also to put into alignment, if you will, some of my own personal discoveries. I was able to find new maps to kind of put those things into and feel like they had a place in my growth.
Well, excellent, Rod, and thanks for sharing that. And I think for anyone who's watching, who's not yet familiar with the either the Integral model or Ubiquity University, so the Integral Flourishing courses that I created, they're hosted on the Ubiquity University website and their platform. And the AQAL model, the AQAL model that you were referring to, Rod, is basically the integral model, so that it's an abbreviation of all quadrants, all levels, and that it also includes all states, all types, and all lines or intelligences. And that is what you're describing is actually one of my motivations for creating the course, is to provide people with theoretical frameworks that can help us to indeed sort of be the best version of ourselves, and also to help others be the best versions of themselves, and to live an overall life of high quality. So it's nice to hear that that was actually the result.
Oh yeah,
of
absolutely
taking the course.
achieved, man. I know that I'm fortunate enough to enroll in part 2, but after taking and completing part 1 of the course, definitely achieved. I mean, your expectation for the course and your anticipation for students' experiences, I can speak personally that was definitely something that I experienced, and so achieved, man. Goal achieved.
Thank you very much. Well, wonderful. And also, like I said in the introduction, you also helped to facilitate the first course, so Integral Flourishing Part 1, for other participants. So that also speaks to your ability to take in the knowledge and then translate it for other people also, and communicate. So,
for sure.
Excellent. Thanks. And you just alluded to expectations. So what expectations did you have of the Integral Flourishing course before you took it?
I was just excited to learn something that I'd never learned before, and to maybe view things in a way that I'd never viewed before. And I received that. I mean, that was an experience that I had. And so coming into it, besides the fact of looking to deepen my understanding with the quadrants, with AQUAL and those kind of concepts that students will learn in the course, I think that was probably, above all, was just really opening myself for another phenomenal experience, and opening another opportunity to learn something within myself, or to learn how to situate my own personal evolution.
Well, excellent. And I think that's also an important point, because much of the personal growth that everyone experiences as a human being, it's subjective, and a lot of stuff happens internally within our own awareness, and it can be very useful to have shared terminology and shared language to communicate that, and to discuss these transformative experiences.
Absolutely. I think during that time, I underestimated the importance of language to describe the subjective realms, or the abstracts. You know, I underestimated that, because I was familiar with a certain resource of language and words to describe change. And you come to a point, or at least I came to a point, to where the language that I was commonly using did not fit where I was, or it could not satisfy me. And so to be able to enroll in a course like the IF course, it was definitely something that provided that extra language. And I must admit, I still don't fully grasp many of the concepts, but I have a much better understanding about how they work, how they operate, and it's provided me another meme or map to resource when I consider how to describe change, and how to consider ourselves as an individual, but a part of the collective. And so that I have a great appreciation for.
Well, excellent. And can you say something about the interactions you had with students, and whether that was enjoyable to you, or what you learned from those?
Yeah, it was thoroughly enjoyable. For one of the obvious reasons is that I was connected with a group of people who are literally across the world. I mean, literally. I mean, I mentioned that I started out in China when I was taking the course. And during that time, I had students who were other students. I think one other student who was in China, who ended up being in my group. I don't know if he was in China at the time, but he was from China. Students who were in India, South America, students who were in the United States, students who were perhaps in Italy. I mean, they were literally from it seemed like every continent. And so that was a very enjoyable experience, because it gave me a peek into their individual lives as well as their cultural experiences, their political backgrounds, and what was going on with the political climates in their countries, how they were adapting to those political um, cultures or climates within their communities, and how they were intending to bring their personal change into a perhaps local, a national, or even global change. And many of the students who are enrolled in the course actually had like global kinds of movements that they were a part of. So I thought that was extremely exciting because I couldn't have anticipated something like that. And to be able to make connection with students who were doing, I mean, amazing things, man, or had been doing amazing things for years out of a time. I mean, there was another component of transgenerational experience where there were people not only from different countries and continents, there were people who, of all ages. That was another key component in making that experience that much more enhanced. And so being able to draw from all of those experiences in one course, you can't beat that. You can't beat that at all.
True, and I think that's one of the, at least for me also, one of the most enjoyable things about this online setting in which the courses take place is that indeed we can have a webinar, so a live interaction with students and faculty with people all across the world. And indeed, as you were saying, we also had people from Russia and from the Netherlands and where I am based, and it was indeed very interesting to see, and Sri Lanka, of course, also, and to see the interactions and the ways in which we're all human, but also the ways in which we're all culturally different, and to be sensitive to that, and to see how particular challenges also arise in communicating and teamwork and things like that. So.
Indeed, I want to highlight something. I hope I don't palaver too much, but I want to highlight something you said right there at the tail end about the challenges that can arise being extra sensitive to the cultural backgrounds. You know, somewhat on a tangent, as we're looking at a global change right now, the course also represented a microcosm of how do we move forward with change, with including those nuanced situations as it pertains to being culturally sensitive. And that course offered, I can't speak for anybody else's group, but my group in particular, I think that we had a chance to experience how to work around some of the cultural diversities that we all had in the course. I mean, everyone was from had a different background in many different ways. And so I think that course also provided us the opportunity to create a certain skill set of working through those cultural challenges, and perhaps providing us with a template on how to navigate through some of the challenges of uniting. I think there's a phrase that talks about that united doesn't mean sameness, and I've grown to really appreciate that. And I think that with a course like this, being united does not mean sameness, but we also need to go through a learning process of what that really means. And so this course constituted as somewhat of a microcosm to really provide us with some skills to start being consciously aware of what the realities of this means, and then how to actually start moving forward into making it a reality, especially with the concepts that we were learning. It was just a really phenomenal course. So there.
Thank you very much, Ron. To give people an idea of what we're speaking about the course and its content, we'll now show a clip about the integral model that we've been discussing throughout this interview. Enjoy this clip from Integral Flourishing Part 1. Integral theory is basically a meta-theory, which means that it's a framework in which we can meaningfully organize various other theories on reality. It was developed by Ken Wilber, and it's also called AQUAL, or the integral model. AQUAL is an abbreviation of all quadrants, all levels, all lines, all states, and all types. but for this course we would like to propose a different abbreviation, which is also an acronym, which means an abbreviation that you can read as a word. And the word is quilts. A quilt is a type of blanket. So if you remember the word quilts, then you remember all of the elements of the integral model. You remember the quadrants, you remember the intelligences, you remember the levels, you remember the types, and you remember the states. The first element of the integral model we'll explore during this course is that of the quadrants. The quadrants describe 4 perspectives we can take on reality, and the more of these 4 quadrants we include in our view of the world, the more holistic our perspective is. The quadrants are built up as a grid combining 2 categories: the category of singular and plural, or individual and collective, and the category of interior and exterior, or inside and outside. We can apply the quadrants to various levels of reality, but for now we'll apply the grid to the level of human beings. If we take me as an example of an individual human being, I have an inside or an interior, which is the world of my subjective experiences, such as feelings, thoughts, tastes and beliefs, in which I experience my I-ness, my being me. This individual interior dimension of reality is described by the upper left quadrant. Of course, I also have an exterior dimension to my individual human existence, related to everything about me that is objectively measurable, such as the height and weight of my body, my blood pressure and heart rate, but also all of the behavior that I display. For instance, we can objectively measure how often I exercise, how many hours I sleep, or how often I use the word cucumber. Everything pertaining to this individual exterior dimension of reality is described by the upper right quadrant. Moving from the upper quadrants, which describe the interior and exterior dimensions of a single human being, to the lower quadrants, which describe the interior and exterior dimensions of a collective consisting of more than one human being. To get a sense of the subjective dimension experienced between human beings, imagine that you and I are having a conversation in which we share a feeling of empathic resonance and mutual understanding. Other human beings who are not part of our interaction and our relationship have no access to the we space that you and I are experiencing. It's a reality exclusive to the two of us. Such we spaces of shared experiences occur not only between 2 people, but also within families, groups of friends, teams of colleagues, and entire cultures. These worlds of shared subjective experience that occur within this collective interior dimension of reality are described by the lower left quadrant. Of course, we also have an exterior dimension to our collective human existence related to everything about our shared world that is objectively measurable, such as 1. Structures or stuff like buildings, clothing, mobile phones and cars, but also 2. Systems such as the economy, philosophical theories, which are systems of organized ideas, and the internet, and 3. Processes such as legal proceedings, wedding ceremonies and recipes. Everything pertaining to this collective exterior dimension of reality is described by the lower right quadrant. The second element of the integral model we'll explore during this course is that of the intelligences. Think of intelligences as different approaches to successfully interact with reality. In this context, we can be intelligent in many different ways. We can be cognitively intelligent, socially intelligent, creatively intelligent, emotionally intelligent, etc. Another element of integral theory we'll examine throughout this course is that of levels. Think of levels as levels of interior development within individuals, but also as levels of interior development within cultures. In addition, think of levels as increasing levels of complexity in the evolution of matter and living organisms, but also as levels of increasing complexity in the evolution of societal systems and natural ecosystems. A concrete example of levels is the evolution of matter from subatomic particles to atoms to molecules to cells to organs, etc. Another concrete example of levels is the developmental process that humans go through from being able to lie down and be nursed to being able to run at full speed. This progression doesn't happen all at once where we leap from our mother's arms and sprint off into the distance. Rather, we go from the stage of being able to lie down to the stage of being able to crawl on our elbows, to the stage of being able to crawl on our hands and knees, to the stage of being able to walk with support, to the stage of being able to walk unsupported, finally to the stage of being able to run. The fourth element of the integral model we'll examine throughout this course is that of types. Think of types as characteristics related to identity. Systems of types or typologies include those comprising masculinity and femininity, but also those concerning personality types, such as MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, the Big Five, and the Enneagram. To get a sense of how personality types can vary from one person to another, think of the difference between A, a person who generally makes choices based on feeling, or B, a person who generally makes choices based on thinking. Of course, we all fluctuate throughout the day in how we prefer to respond to reality, but most people will identify with generally being more of a feeler or generally being more of a thinker. The same applies to masculinity and femininity, where most people will identify with generally being a more masculine person or generally being a more feminine person. During Module 11, we'll explore how we can use the element of types to increase appreciation for ourselves and others and consciously celebrate both our similarities and our differences. Another element of integral theory we'll examine throughout this course is that of states of consciousness. To get a sense of the variance between states of consciousness, think of the fundamental difference between the waking state and the dream state. Yet how the experience of being yourself is fundamentally the same whether you're at work in the waking state or flying through a sky of custard with the body of an elephant in the dream state. So through exploring states of consciousness, we'll also investigate our sense of identity and the very nature of reality itself. So that was a clip from Integral Flourishing Part 1, describing the integral model. What was most useful to you in the course, Rod?
I guess I have to just go back to the simplifying the concepts of the integral flourishing and simplifying the concepts of the quadrants and the AQuals. I think that's one of the first things, and I can't even rank these things and say that was like the most useful, whatnot. That was just one of the things that comes to mind. Again, seeing that I had enrolled in other courses that introduced that to me, but I didn't feel gave me as much time with those concepts, and it was almost like remixing the concepts in different contexts, that it became more of a reality, or it became more reified, like, oh, okay, this is how I can use it in this context. Oh, this is how I can use it in this context. In every module for those 13 or 14 weeks, you get a reiteration of the quadrants and the AQual concepts, and it's diversified in so many different contexts, man, that you really feel like you are making progress and making this applicable to your daily life. And so I'll just wrap it up there, because I could go into just individual details, man, that would just keep us here all day. So I'll just say that was probably, I'm not gonna say the most useful, but that's one of the things that sticks out to me most at this moment.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Rod. That's a great compliment to me indeed. And for anyone watching, to provide a little more context, the way I approached all of the material, and that's what I typically do when I'm teaching, is I try to start from a perspective where you don't need to know anything, and really start to build up the basics of why a model is, or how it's structured, why it exists, and what the usefulness is, and that you can sort of logically follow for yourself each step of the way. So for anyone watching, the webinars are basically every week of the courses. We get together in an online webinar with people, with all of the students and me, and Rod, if you're facilitating, then of course you also. And we basically just go through some of the material. We look at some questions that people might have, and we allow everyone to share their perspectives and experiences. On the facilitator end or the student's end, it was a great midpoint to just check in, for one. I think that's important to have on an online class, is the ability to check in a real-time situation. Then two, because there was so many juicy things that were being conversed with on the timeline within our groups, to be able to take some of those things and highlight them in those webinars, I think was phenomenal. And then the real-time experiences that students would share about how they implemented some of those experiences within their own daily life was an added bonus for the collective group, because you get a chance to hear how other people are
also experiencing, applying some of the concepts that they learned. So I think that the webinars were great. They were absolutely great to have, man. Very refreshing.
That's good to hear. And indeed, as you also point to, besides the webinars, we also, of course, have a sort of channel where a hidden and secure channel where people can post assignments and discuss topics, and I go through all of those, and you, if you're facilitating also, and we respond to the assignments and keep the interactions fresh and going, just like in the webinars, indeed.
Sure.
Nice.
Sure.
Nice. Any final reflections on your part?
You won't regret enrolling in the course. And I'm going to give an extra push for this course because of the changes, the global changes that we're encountering. We need courses like this to provide, again, some background and some resources and some practical ways to navigate through these changes, because there's so many people who are looking for, what do we do next? What are our next steps? The skills that you've acquired and that you are now offering in a course, that these things are invaluable at this moment, and we need this. And so for those who are wondering what to do next and how to work through some of the toxicity that we're experiencing, this is a great course for those who don't have access to a therapy. I'm not saying that this is a complete substitution for therapy, but it definitely provides a therapeutic experience. And it gives you real hands-on, tangible things that you can work with that can help provide some guidance as well as some relief for perhaps some of the stresses that you may be going through, and understanding thyself in a greater way that maybe before enrolling in this course you would not have had. And so those are some of my final words. What are you waiting on? Take the course. I promise you won't regret it.
Well, thanks, Rod, for a wonderful endorsement and for your time and your energy. And that's all for today. So thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next call.